Hello, welcome back, Sergeant Major Sit Rep. Okay, today going to be a little dicey. I'm going to cover a couple of things, but I'm sure by the end of the day I'll be called a racist and a Native American hater, whatever. But we're going to lay this out here because the mainstream media, obviously, I've said it many times, the mainstream media is a failed media organization, but it is a very effective propaganda organization for the Democrat Party. Um, Numerous reasons why we can see it in the public. I don't have to go through all of them, but the recent epiphany from the New Jersey governor that there's illegals on the voter rolls. How many times have I put that on this program? Just last week, we did the same thing. I put on this program the information from Arizona. A couple weeks prior, all the way back to 2023, I've been saying there is illegals, non-qualified registrants. The voter rolls are garbage. Now, I'm not going to get deep into it today because I'm going to do a whole episode on it, and I've shared some stuff with ODNI, Gateway Pundit, and some other outlets to do a better news story on it, the actual factual data that I can release. But the common denominator is we use the same programs. We send everything to Eric in the cloud, and we just expect that everything's going to work. And I saw Governor Sherrill in New Jersey say, well, it was a software glitch. It's funny. I posted the video last week of my Arizona glitch results, and it's always a glitch. But not getting into all that today, but I'm asking one question alone. These glitches, these software anomalies, these bugs, these issues, these incidents, how many times do they benefit the Republican Party? Have you heard that in the media? Absolutely not. You're not going to hear it because they don't want you to know that these things happen, and it's always in favor of the left. So we're going to have more on that, and it's going to be probably, I'd say give me a week, maybe 2 weeks, and it's probably going to be an hour-long episode with some pretty intense graphics and the receipts, putting all the receipts on here. I'm gonna let Gateway Pundit run with it. If they finish before I do, we will post their work on here as well. So what I'm going to get into today is the phony fake media. Now that the primaries are over in Arizona, and it's going to be Andy Biggs, as we knew, nobody knew what Schweikert was doing. He just getting in there, making some campaign finance funds, building his little pack up and supporting the McCainites. But he's gone now. 70 plus percent of the vote went to Andy Biggs, which no surprise, no secret in Arizona. So it's going to be Biggs versus Hobbs. Hobbs has been an absolute disaster in Arizona. Disaster. And I'm going to walk you through this and explain why the Democrats should not be reasoned with. They should not be consulted. They should not be bargained with. And we definitely should not be working with them. This bipartisan, all that is gone. Now that the communists have infiltrated the Democrat Party, that's over. We can no longer negotiate with them. We have to have numbers. We have to beat them at the crooked ballot box. The only way to do that is in numbers. Arizona, the magic number is 4%. We get a 4% greater turnout than we had last time. They can't beat the cheat. Even with the duplicates, even with the illegals, we win. So with that being said, we need to get as many Republicans, real Republicans, not these rhinos, not these Thune type of idiots, but real Republicans that will support the Constitution and the conservative agenda. And here's why it's important. So in 2018, Governor Hobbs, then Senator Katie Hobbs, was the Senate Democrat leader. And she was pushing a bill, Senate Bill 1465, and it was dying, and it was, I've done the research on the bill. So this bill passed out of both chambers, almost 100% bipartisan support. And you would ask, well, why? Well, a dope deal between Republicans and Democrats and the tribal leaders that are elected to the Arizona House and Senate to give them something so they would sign on a budget. So the Democrats get their win. Republicans acquiesce on something that should have been a good program. But here's why none of these things are, and I'll tell you what it is. Senate Bill 1465 was the sober living home certification. It sounds good, like we're going to certify sober living homes and make sure they're doing the right things, and it's going to be great. We're going to get all these Indians off the booze and off the drugs and make them a part of the workforce. Yeah, I just did that. I just rolled my eyes. That means I'm racist. But here's the real deal. What these bills do is outside of the Constitution. Nowhere in the United States or the Arizona Constitution does it grant and authorize the redistribution of wealth and welfare and free medical. None of that is in the Constitution. So when we start skirting the edges of what would be constitutionally legal, we start creating these areas of influence for outsiders. So I know that's kind of convoluted, so let me clean it up. So what they did, Hobbs and the Democrats, at this point, to get the votes on the budget, the Republicans acquiesce, and they created the sober living licensing and referral system. Okay, sounds good. We're going to get people off the booze and the fentanyl and the meth. But what they did is they created a legitimate and publicly supported sober living behavioral health marketplace, another marketplace in healthcare that is not constitutionally correct. And they say it's cleaning the system up because it claims verification, ownership, transparency, patient tracking, physical inspections, all the shenanigans that we see are bullshit with the Leering centers and all the other nonsense. So that's what this bill did, is establish some guidelines, but in doing so, it put the framework for a marketplace. Now, government's creating markets, you would think delivers jobs. Well, you could say that, but what it also delivers is fraud. And in more and more cases, we see the fraud. That's you folks know that watch this show. You watch me rant. That's basically my thing. I go after the fraud, the waste, the abuse. I was the Doge before the Doge, and I've been attacking a lot of different things in Arizona. Access and DES was one of them. I've focused on elections because that's that was my assignment as chairman. But this got reported in the news a little bit, and our attorney general, the ever so lovely Chris Mays, she made a press conference statement. Well, I've arrested and I've prosecuted. She didn't do shit. This was a federal government, Homeland Security, Department of Justice led operation that a whistleblower reported the fraud. Access had to report the fraud because it was reported to them. The federal government came in, took over. Yes, the attorney general prosecuted a few state cases, but the federal government is one that did the heavy lifting, did all the work, and she tried to stand by and take the glory. And, just another fake Democrat. She don't know what she's doing. And gets out there on the podium. Well, we did this and we did that. She didn't really do anything. If you look up the cases, these are all federal cases. I'll post one on here. Matter of fact, when we get there, I will put some mug shots and a federal case number on there, so you can look and see that it wasn't the state of Arizona doing the prosecution. I always bring the receipts. So the sober living scandal, what it did is it organized basically a brokership. Think of real estate, where you have a broker that has a bunch of agents that sell a product. So it kind of sounds like a money laundering system. Unlike in real estate, you actually get a product. You buy a home. Yeah, the broker's making some money. The realtor's making some money. The other side's making some money. The seller's making some money. But in this case, the broker that's making the money isn't delivering a product or a service, but he's billing for it, and they're billing Medicaid, Medicare, access, and it was a $2.8 billion fraud scheme just in Arizona. Now, we're looking at the end of this thing is going to be closer to $3.1 billion. Yes, billion with a B of our tax dollars being wasted away. Now, so far in this, as of May this year, 140 individuals have been indicted, 41 convicted, only $139 million recovered out of $2 billion. Where is the rest of the money? 92% of these things are closed down. So the federal government came in under the Trump administration and cleaned house. Now, here's how the criminal mode operated. So you have a recruiter and brokers and van drivers, and they would approach people on tribal lands and homeless encampments, hospitals, detox, on the street, and they were promised treatment, housing, food, employment, and recovery assistance. But what really happened, these folks were picked up and they were transported to a location, and they were basically locked in there and not receiving any care or treatment. But people were billing millions and millions of dollars for the treatment on this. Now, there was human trafficking, there was rape, there was abuse, there were several murders. And this went undetected for quite some time. Now, the cases involved businesses that employed various brokers, had buildings. Some were just basically converted hotel rooms, some were shacks, some had no physical location. None. But they were billing, and they said they had patients, and they had patient data. But what stands out most of all, in Minnesota, you had the Somalis. Ohio, you had the Somalis. Nevada, you had the Africans. Here in Arizona, where I guess we're all inclusive, we had the variety of people. And we'll post some of those, but here's some of the victims. Jeffrey Husito, 43, Zuni Peblo, died in Glendale at a sober living home. His family reported he's gone, and they've been moving him from facility to facility, and they couldn't find him. They were still billing for him after he died. Fernando Largo, 32, Carson Leslie, 44. They were named in the wrongful death case. Now, how is this not murder? I don't know. Wrongful death and their treatment people. Yeah. Oh, okay. It's a mess. So the Access hotline, their own numbers from Access was 34,977 hotline calls. 11,000 members of those 34,000 were promised some kind of service. 4,100 people were provided temporary hotel lodging. 125 of them received transportation out of state. So I just call Access and I say, yeah, I'm a Native American and I'm drunk all the time and I just need to get somewhere. Can I get a bus ticket? And taxpayers pay for it. Now, I'm not beating up too bad on Native Americans, because if you're white, black, whatever, you can do the same thing. That's what I was talking about at the original opening of the program. This is a redistribution program of taking taxpayer dollars and, quote, giving it to humanitarian causes. I mean, we are the richest country in the world. We can afford to take care of our downtrodden people, but is that the role of government? Do we write bills to create a marketplace for this to happen? Absolutely not. I got beat up this year from one of my seatmates' bills, wrote a bill forcing insurance companies to pay for breast cancer screenings. They got to pay for it. The diagnostic, anything. Now, we know the insurance companies are going to cover the breast cancer, but a lot of times they didn't cover some of the screenings. So a bill was written to force private business insurance to cover breast cancer screenings. I thought Planned Parenthood did that for free, or maybe that was a lie. Yeah, that was a lie. But nevertheless, I voted no on that bill because that bill does the same thing that this bill will do. It will create a phony marketplace for, guess what? Breast cancer screening centers. And you're going to have these women go in there for a legitimate breast cancer screening, knowing that insurance has to pay for it. And you've created another marketplace that is ripe for fraud. Not only that, everyone's premiums are going to go up. Yes, I know males get breast cancer, but do my premiums go up, to pay for other breast cancer screenings? I mean, I have a wife, I have a daughter. I support breast cancer screenings. I support any care they need for the breast cancer. It's a terrible disease. We've lost friends to breast cancer, but I can't in good conscience vote against the Constitution and create a marketplace for breast cancer, because it's just going to be fraud, just like this sober living nonsense. So Access in Arizona and other state actors, in 23, the crackdown started, and that was by the federal government. And it really didn't go anywhere until Trump got in office. And then he redirected through Department of Justice, as they were doing border stuff, additional agents. So all the agents that were moved to the border, they weren't just doing border stuff. They were working these fraud cases. So Access in December of 24, they had 266 credible allegations of fraud. And some of those were launched by yours truly. 118 quality care management issues. And there's way more than that, because my whistleblower, I can't get too deep into that data, but Access is required to visit these homes and make inspections on the quality of care, the home they're in, the status of the home. If everything's in compliance, they're not doing it. They're not doing it. The whistleblower testified, provided evidence. Access needs a complete wipe. But they did start suspending accounts. So they suspended accounts, and they called it bipartisan institutional failure. Well, the bill was signed under Doug Ducey, but the Hobbs administration is the one that started funding it like there was no tomorrow. No checks, no background, no visit to the facility, nothing. Hey, I got a guy who needs some help over here. Well, here's some money. Thank you, Governor Hobbs. Here's some more money. Here's some more money. So the money just trickled out to the tune of almost $3 billion. And what we get for it? Dead people, fraud, waste, abuse. The housing fraud in there, the human trafficking, was all funded by the state of Arizona. Now, we've got a judge that ruled in a case, and he said the state wasn't culpable because it was law. But it's the same with DCS. When we know there's human trafficking, we prove there's human trafficking, and we provide that attorney the information. Even 12 News, the rotten 12 News that doesn't want to report anything negative against Democrats, they air the story of the victim and the suspect, and there's video. But what did DCS do? They buried it. And their attorney is going to fight hard to protect the agency. Let's not fight hard to protect kids, but nevertheless, here we are. So in June of 23, moratorium was put out on all these behavioral health, outpatient clinics, all these things that were tied to this. Then we started tightening the belt. So Access, we funded Access some additional money to hire an examiner, Barry Dunn's company. Don't know the man, but great reputation, to examine claims, provider claims, enrollment, membership enrollment, and audit the entire program. And what he came back with was shocking. I mean, he came back with the fraud. So the Democrats supported this statutorily from the very beginning. They couldn't get it. They forced it and had everybody vote for it to get the Native American vote on the budget. Yes, 29 senators voted yes for it. Hobbs was specifically among the affirmative voters and pushing it. Catherine Miranda was the only senator that didn't vote for it. And I've reached out to her. I know her. I don't get along with her very well. She used to be a moderate, and now she's been drugged to the ultra far left by the party that is supported by the communists. But I want to reach out to her and find out why she didn't support it. Was it because she didn't get what she wanted, or did she have a legitimate concern? I don't know. But they punished her for that, like they punished Lydia Hernandez from the House for voting too many times with the Republicans. They primaried her with a Democrat socialist, and they won. They took out a I'm gonna say it, a reasonable Democrat, someone who is not a communist. She's a leftist. Don't get me wrong. She's for higher taxes and all the money going to public schools, but she's not crazy. She's not a communist. She's a down to earth, everyday person that just has different views. Somebody that we work with, and they punished her for that. So she got what she wanted for her district, and now this Democrat socialist is not going to get anything for her district. So the very people that voted her out because she worked with Republicans too much are the ones that are going to suffer, but they don't see that because they're idiots. So this entire fraud scheme led to another bill, SB 1655 in 2024 by Hathaway, proposed broader regulation to include fingerprint and backgrounds, higher civil penalties, family notification, restriction on transporting intoxicated people, controls involving unlicensed operators, and additional licensing enforcement provisions. So let me tell you how this works. If you're not in the room, you're not part of the political game. Fingerprinting and background requirements. Yes, sounds good, sounds upfront, sounds like a thing. We want background checks. We want people to be cleared. We don't want felons and child sex offenders taking care of people. But who does the fingerprinting and background checks? Well, that's a third-party vendor. UPS stores do them. They have specific third-party vendors. Now you got Staples with machines. They're everywhere. And these machines are just like ATMs. They're owned by a company. Typically, a local company will buy 20 or 30 of these machines, and they charge money to do this. So we've created another sub-business in the main business, higher civil penalties. So we're going to keep people in jail longer that violated the law, and the taxpayers are going to fund that. The family notification, guess who's going to do that? That's going to be a third-party provider that tracks everything. It's going to be like an HMO consultant that tracks all this stuff. Restrictions on transporting intoxicated people. This is a good one. Well, again, it sounds good. Well, we can't just have drunks getting in the car with a provider or a transport company. We have to have some control measures. So transport companies have to have certain vendor-specific items like cameras, cages, train drivers, a whole nother industry created. Now, controls involving unlicensed operators. Think about that. So we're going to control an unlicensed operator. Why not just make them get a license? Well, they live in the tribal region. It's hard for them to travel. We've got, we don't want to disenfranchise them because they don't have an ID card, even though they have a tribal ID card and everybody knows it. But we're going to allow operators that are not licensed to operate with certain control measures, expanding the entire business. So it passed in the Senate, but it didn't come law because everybody figured that out. We're just trying to pad this broken system with more nonsense. Now, what we did is 1308, and that was inspections, certain licensing requirements, incident and death reporting mandatory, and authority, 100% authority over unlicensed operators. Cesar Aguilar, he did support this, stating it would establish standards and force businesses to help vulnerable people. That is his direct quote from the floor. Now, he's a Democrat socialist, far left communist, endorsed by the Communist Party, member of the Arizona House of Representatives, and he said it would force businesses to help vulnerable people. Since when does the government get in the business of helping vulnerable people by force? We don't. None of this should have been passed. This is why we stick to the constitutional guidelines, because once you start getting outside of those guidelines, you completely corrupt the entire system and you open it for fraud, just like in voting, because we have all these third-party vendors providing software, Avid, Inlex, Edema, they're all the same. The Edema is used in Arizona and New Jersey, Oklahoma, California, all the states having the voter fraud. And that company themselves, they put out a statement, well, our software doesn't do what you're claiming. And I believe them, because software is programmed to do something. That something can be changed by humans. And to do that, you have to have parameters in which you can manipulate the software. And if you look at the statements of work, those parameters are built in to allow the MVDs to manipulate things. And thus we have illegals on the voter rolls. We have sober living home fraud. Now, where do those two meet? During COVID, we had an access rule. It was a COVID rule, federal government rule, and the states copied it. In Arizona, it was access rule 1301. It allowed self-attestation for these things because we couldn't go anywhere because it was COVID. 6-foot rule, mask, everything that the left forced on people. So we're not going to do that. We're not going to force you to risk your life by coming into the state and providing your license or documenting your income. We're not going to do any of that. What we're going to do is just going to have you raise your right hand and swear all the things that you just put on the form are true. Oh, you signed it under penalty of perjury? Great, thanks. Yeah, we're all good. Here's your millions of dollars. So this endorsed fake billing. This supported the patient brokering idea, creating this business. It approved recruitment of vulnerable Native Americans. So if under this previous law, I could go in a van to Peach, to the res, about 30 miles from here, and I could recruit people for my sober living home that I don't have. So what does recruit mean? Well, I can say, I'm going to put you in a facility, the back of this van, and I'm going to treat you every other day. And we're going to park this van at this P.O. box right here. So this is going to be it. You come get your drugs and we're going to treat you, but I need you to fill out this form so I can bill Medicaid for all this. We're going to give you a little money. We're going to give you your methadone or whatever we're going to give you. And we're going to take care of you. We're going to get you straight. We're going to help you find a job. All out of the back of this van. Completely legal. $3 billion of fraud. $3 billion. So these folks, you know what? Let's post this right here. Here are the 10 people that did the most damage. Not saying anything, but here's their mugshots. There's their names and where they're from. So the Pakistanis fared very well during this little adventure. And here they are. Now, to show that it wasn't Chris Mays, let's post right after it. Let's stick the case on there. So asset 2 right here. This is the federal indictment, federal case that was brought against all this. So that's just one of many cases that the federal government opened up. Now, if you Google this, you'll find 4 or 5 very quick, very benign news stories by the leftist media in Arizona. But you go to Gateway, you go to some of the other folks, they actually have the whistleblower statements. They have the crimes. They have the names. I've given you more than anyone else has given on this. And some of this I'm not, I know some of these cases are still in civil court, so I didn't mention some of these. But just last year, the judge rejected the state's effort to dismiss the litigation. So the state wanted to dismiss the whole thing, say, no. We were good actors. We just got duped. And the judge wasn't buying that at all. So will the state be found culpable because it was reported by members of the House, members of the Senate, members of the public, whistleblowers? Access didn't do anything until their hand was forced by the federal government, and the federal government said, we're going to start taking money away. And by the way, where's this person? Oh, they died. Why didn't you report that? This seems suspicious. Let's go to the location. Oh, it's a shanty in the middle of nowhere with barely running water, and you're treating people here on this mattress on the floor. It was that bad, folks. $3 billion lost. You can thank Governor Katie Hobbs. You can thank the Democrat Party. That's why we don't work with Democrats. That's why we don't get in the business of healthcare. We don't get in the business of welfare. We need to get out all of that because it is not constitutionally sound. If the founding fathers thought the redistribution of wealth would have been a good idea for the downtrodden, they would have put something in the Constitution, a mechanism to do that. So every agency that is not written in the Constitution has to live in the executive branch. So who do you blame? The executive branch. Now, when we do stupid things in the legislature, you got to blame your member. You got to call your member and tell them, stop voting for this nonsense. Now, we're compassionate people. We're an honest, just people. We want to help people that are down. We want to get them back on their feet. We want them to get jobs and produce and pay taxes, but we don't want to do it at the expense of others. The church should be doing this. There are NGOs that should be doing this, but not with taxpayer dollars. You want to volunteer? You want to pay extra money? You go right ahead. A lot of folks don't have the extra money and they can't afford it coming out of their salary. They can't afford their Social Security being robbed for all this nonsense. Not to mention the green energy nonsense that wasted billions and billions of dollars. Stop voting for Democrats. Stop listening to the mainstream media. Go to your state's legislative website, read the bills. We tell the Democrats all the time. They stand up on the floor and make these nonsensical claims about, well, this bill will disenfranchise every woman that's married. And you just want to stand up and say, read the effing bill. It says none of that. But they don't care. They just stand up and lie. They're overwhelmed by the communists, so they're being pushed even further left. And we got to stop working with them. We just have to take them out at the ballot box, vote them out, get super majorities, push the agenda through, lock it down so it can't be manipulated later. So if you like your doctor, you can keep him and your rates are going to go down. That's my point. Government got in the business of making a business. And how did it fare for the people? It did not. So with that, folks, I'll leave you this week. Next week or the week after, I'll have the final on the election fraud. I'm waiting on some better numbers. Don't believe the mainstream media on this 6,000 nonsense with 400 voting. That's already been proven wrong. I'm waiting for better numbers out of Oklahoma, New Jersey, and Nevada. And once I get them, I will post them with the receipts. Until then, train like they hate you because they do.